1978, Wales, the sinister twins who spoke a cursed language and mysteriously disappeared forever in the chilling town of Hadley Falls. Whispers of dark tales lingered like the heavy fog that clung to its decaying houses. Julia, a weary single mother, had heard the hushed stories of the whispering twins, long before her 10-year-old twins, Lily and Ethan, began to unravel those very threads. As an exhausted nurse grappling with relentless shifts, she barely had the strength to guard them from the gnawing haunt of their world, a world that was slowly being drawn into the shadow of an abandoned house at the end of the street. The air was thick with a foreboding that felt like a ghost pressing against her chest. And now, it seemed the very essence of her children was under siege. It began softly, a small stir of discomfort that Julia brushed off. She had always been told children had vivid imaginations, their minds spinning with tales of enchantment. But when she heard Lily and Ethan whispering late at night, their voices intertwined in an eerie dialect that made her skin crawl, her heart pounded with dread. It was as if they were beckoning something from beyond, words curling from their lips like smoke. The shadows of the neglected house drew them in with a sinister promise, and Julia felt helpless. Who would rescue them from their fascination? Then Mr. Talbot emerged from the periphery, his beaming smile hiding something sinister beneath. He would stroll by in the early evening, a drink in hand, mumbling about the beauty of the dilapidated home. The way he spoke made Julia's blood run cold, a master puppeteer tugging at strings attached to her children. She could not shake the feeling of tangled secrecy, nor the despair needle that drew tighter in her chest each night. The nightmares that plagued her sleep whispered of betrayal, though she dismissed them as the fatigue of her late-night shifts. "It's nothing," Julia told herself. But deep down, she could feel the tension crackle like static in the air. One night, after a long shift, an all-consuming panic washed over Julia as she raced through damp streets, each alley echoing the spine-chilling laughter of broken dreams. She found her twins in the dim light, eyes glazed, murmuring those strange words, as if the very walls of their home had absorbed the secrets of the house. It felt like they teetered on the edge of reality, balanced between her and that darkness. "Lily. Ethan." She called, her voice tremoring as it shattered the stillness. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." Their heads snapped up, an unfamiliar glimmer dancing in their eyes. Julia felt as though her children were being pulled into a different dimension, one she could not access. The once safe corners of their home morphed into a treacherous maze. And as Mr. Talbot intervened, hinting at his deep familiarity with the house, Julia felt her heart race, but nothing prepared her for what happened next. One night, her children vanished. The air thickened, dripping with the haunting symphony of their whispers haunting the silence. Panic surged through her, driving her to the mouth of despair. The abandoned house, once a distant fear, now felt like her final reckoning. As she approached, shadows danced across the walls, flitting like phantoms. An ancient chant floated into the night air, pulling her closer, but her heart warned her to retreat. She clutched her throat, every instinct screaming to flee, yet she could not abandon her children. Would they return to her, or had they crossed into a realm where darkness reigned, destined to remain forever? Julia stood at the edge of her nightmares, the once familiar street folding into a tapestry of dread, leaving her hanging in the void of uncertainty. Julia took a deep breath, a fragile tether to her fading sanity. The air around the house felt charged, sticky with an unnameable dread. She stepped closer, the twisted wrought iron gate creaking ominously as if warning her to stay away. Her palms were clammy against her sides, a cold sweat trickling down her back. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, wrapping around her like tendrils of fog, pulling her deeper into the darkness. "Lily. Ethan." She cried out again, desperation overlapping her fear. The words echoed into the night, swallowed by shadows dancing beneath the dilapidated eaves. Every instinct screamed at her to turn back, yet something compelled her forward, a magnetic force etched in her children's stolen spirits. The door stood ajar, splintered wood creaking on rusted hinges as Julia pushed it open and stepped inside. The prickle of cold air enveloped her, and the stale scent of decay wrapped around her throat, almost choking her. She stumbled into the living room, its once vibrant wallpaper peeling like the memories of happy families long gone. Dust motes floated in the meager light, a ghostly shimmer surrounding her. In the far corner, she spotted them. Lily and Ethan stood, their backs to her, entranced by what lay ahead. Her heart raced, each thud echoing in her ears. They were bathed in a strange light filtering through a grimy window, and as she moved closer, she noticed the shadows flickering and twisting against the walls, contorting like tortured souls. Mommy Lily's voice was a fractured whisper, barely recognizable. Julia's chest tightened. "Help us!" They both turned, eyes unnaturally wide, void of warmth and color. They didn't speak, their lips moved, forming the words of that cursed language, as if drawing power from the very air around them. "Stop! You have to come back." Julia's plea hung in the air, met only by the intensity of their gaze. The weight of the house pressed down on her, and she felt every creak of floorboards beneath her feet echoing the loss and despair surrounding her. Suddenly, the walls pulsed with energy, shuddering as if something ancient lived within them, something that fed on the innocence of children. "Come play with us," Mommy Ethan's voice morphed into a melody dripping with malice, chilling her to the bone. It wasn't her son speaking, it was something else dark and twisted, emerging through him. Julia took a step back, just as Mr. Talbot appeared in the doorway, a sinister smile stretching across his face. "Very brave of you, Julia. Venturing into the lion's den without a thought for your own safety," he said. His voice sent another shiver racing down her spine. "They are better here, don't you think? They've traded their burdens for something much more delicious." "Get away from them!" Julia shouted. But her thoughts raced. Was he behind this? Had he ensnared her children in his web? The realization twisted in her gut as shadows stretched from the corners of the room, wrapping around her. They whispered in her ears, drowning out her thoughts. As they surged closer, pinning her against the wall, she glimpsed something gleaming through the darkness. A small, weathered toy, Lily's favorite. It lay forgotten on the ground, a beacon of her children's identity, tethered to a world which threatened to drift beyond reach. Julia extended her hand, heart pounding, desperate to grasp that thread of hope. "Lily. Ethan. Focus on me. Remember who you are." Her voice broke through the murmur of darkness, momentarily halting their twisted spell. For a fleeting moment, she saw clarity in their eyes, a flicker of recognition. But the shadows surged forward, hungry to reclaim their grip. In the chaos, Julia lunged for the toy, but the shadows enveloped her completely. She gasped as cold fingers tightened around her throat. Then everything went dark. Was it too late? And that chilling question hung in the air as she felt herself being pulled into the depths of the house, far away from the light. Julia's heart raced with a ferocity she had never known. Panic surged through her veins like ice. The cold fingers that clutched her throat tightened, squeezing the breath from her lungs. She tried to scream, but no sound escaped. All she could hear was the relentless whispering, wrapping around her mind, clawing at her sanity. They were chanting that dreadful language, twisting words that felt ancient and vile, and she was drowning in their darkness. Suddenly, she felt herself being thrust back into the living room, the shadows retreating as if respecting some unseen boundary. She gasped, filling her lungs with the putrid air, desperate to steady herself. Mr. Talbot was still there, watching her with an unholy glee sparkling in his eyes. "Ah, the mother fights for her children. How noble but futile," he taunted, his voice dripping with amusement. "You see, they're not just here for you. They belong to the shadows now." Julia's gaze darted to her children. Lily's playful spirit was gone, replaced by that hollow gaze, while Ethan's innocence was twisted into something grotesque. They moved closer to the edge of the light, as if the shadows were calling them back, wrapping around their small bodies like a shroud. "Mommy." Lily's tone was brighter now, almost mocking, and it sent a chill down Julia's spine. "You should join us. It's so much fun." "No. You're wrong. This isn't who you are." Julia shrieked, her voice breaking. She stumbled toward them, desperate to bridge the chasm that the darkness had carved. Mr. Talbot stepped in front of her, blocking her path. "You cannot save them. They have chosen this. You, on the other hand, have a choice to make. Will you surrender to despair or fight this futile battle? There are worse fates than being lost in the shadows." The walls pulsed again, a rhythm that echoed her heartbeat. What he said hung in the air like a noose, tightening around her thoughts. Would surrendering mean freedom from this torment? But if she gave in, would her children be gone forever? The moral dilemma bore down on her, yet her instincts screamed at her to fight. Julia lunged for the shadow-cloaked figures of her children, her fingers brushing against the weathered toy lying against the floorboards. It pulsed with a faint light, a connection to who they once were. Wrapping her fingers around it, memories surged: playful laughter, bedtime stories, and the warmth of hugs. "Lily. Ethan. I love you," she shouted, pouring every ounce of her being into the words. "Remember us. Remember our love." The shadows recoiled momentarily, the children hesitating, confusion flickering in their eyes. For an instant, Julia saw a glimpse of her daughter, the little girl she had once known, but it was swallowed again by the encroaching darkness. A wave of shadows crashed forward, pulling the children back. The frantic whispers crescendoed, encoded with venomous energy that made her vision swim. Julia fell to her knees, desperate, tears streaking down her face. Then, a flicker in the corner of her eye, something shifted in the shadowy mass. A shape formed, a figure emerging from within the darkness. Julia squinted, heart pounding. Was it a friend or foe? Who, or what was this specter? The shape twisted as it approached, revealing features that were both familiar and terrifying. Her breath quickened. "What are you doing here?" she gasped. But before she could comprehend the answer, the entity spoke in a voice low and haunting. "Julia, you must choose now. Time is running out." The words echoed, reverberating through the room, and the shadows writhed at their edges. She felt the pulse of the house as if it had a heartbeat, one that pushed her closer to the brink of oblivion. Could she truly save her children? Or was their fate already sealed? As the pulse quickened and shadows swirled, her choice loomed larger than life. What would she sacrifice to bring them back? And before she could ponder further, everything around her began to fade, accompanied by a whisper, "Join us forever." The room plunged into encroaching darkness once more, leaving her with one haunting thought: was it the end, or a darker beginning? Julia's heart felt like a drum in her chest, pounding against the fear that threatened to swallow her whole. The darkness erupted around her, swirling shadows whispering her name and cutting deep through her thoughts. She clutched the toy tighter, its dim glow a flicker of hope against the all-consuming void. Julia, the chilling voice of the specter reverberated in the heavy air, wrapping around her mind with a monstrous grip. "Choose wisely." The floorboards creaked under her knees, a haunting reminder that this space once held laughter and warmth. Now, it was a battlefield, drawn between light and shadow, life and despair. Memories of her children clashed with the twisted figures they had become, trapped in a nightmare that clawed at her sanity. "Lily. Ethan." She yelled again, desperation pouring from her lips. "You are not lost. Fight them." But the children stared back, their eyes wide and unblinking, reflecting the abyss that enveloped them. Julia's chest tightened. She could almost hear their laughter mixing with the whispers, merging into a cacophony of torment. It all swelled until it reached a fever pitch, and Julia felt as if she would burst from the pressure. Mr. Talbot paced to the edge of the dark and light, an ominous figure in this twisted carnival of uncertainty. "You think love can save them? Love means nothing here," His laugh echoed, mocking, a serrated edge in the suffocating air. They belong to us. No. Julia screamed, her voice cracking. They belong to me. I refuse to let you take them. With a surge of desperation, she shot forward, desperate to reach her children. Yet, with each step, the shadows thickened, wrapping themselves around her, pulling her down as if the very ground wanted to consume her. She was losing them, losing herself, the shadows quivered as if sensing her resolve. Julia could hear faint cries beneath the whispers, sounds that sounded like her children calling for her. "Mommy, help us!" Clenching her fists around the toy, Julia pictured their faces, the warmth of their embraces, the happiness they all shared. Would she give up everything for that light? There had to be a way to pierce through the darkness, to reach them before they slipped away forever. In her mind, she summoned all her strength and love. "You are loved!" Julia cried out, the words spilling from her heart like fire. "You are my children, and nothing can change that." The shadows hesitated, the whispers faltering. Julia could feel the energy shift, as if her words had severed a thread binding them. In that fragile moment, she glimpsed a flicker of recognition in Lily's eyes, a spark of the little girl she once knew. "Mommy!" Ethan reached for her, the darkness trembling under the bridge of hope she was creating. "Please, we're scared." But just as hope bloomed, Mr. Talbot advanced, closing the distance. "This is your last chance, Julia. You can join them or be consumed by your grief." Anguish twisted within her. Could she let go? Could she really surrender? Time was slipping away, with shadows creeping closer and shadows pulling at her thoughts. She felt the congealing dread wrapping around her heart like a vice. "Choose." The spectre commanded ominously, a figure of dread against the collapsing walls. Perhaps the choice wasn't about surrender. Perhaps it was about unyielding love, propelled by a mother's instinct to fight. Julia took a breath, preparing herself to unleash the full strength of her love, but then, just as she was about to cast her decision into the void, the familiar ghostly figure emerged again from the darkness, its hauntingly familiar visage twisting with cruel intensity. "Hurry, Julia, or they will be lost to you forever." And as the shadows recoiled, a singular question pierced through the frenzy. What sacrifice was she truly willing to make to save her children? Was it too late? Would love be enough? With every moment ticking away, the darkness clawed back, drawing her precariously closer to an unimaginable fate. The whispers returned, stronger than ever, clawing at her sanity, and just before the light flickered out completely, all she could think was, what would it take to break the shadow's grip? The shadows lunged at her, cold fingers tightening around Julia's throat, squeezing away hope like a weak flame. Her mind raced, thoughts battling for clarity amid the swirling chaos. What would it take? The flickering toy pulsed with her heartbeat, each thump pushing her to fight back. "Stop!" she commanded, her voice now steadier. "You don't own them. They are not yours." But the darkness writhed, morphing into grotesque forms that mocked her defiance. Faceless figures with empty mouths spilled forth a cacophony of taunts, drowning out her cries. "Mommy, please!" The faint voice of Ethan drifted through the noise, a whisper barely audible, yet filled with such raw terror it set her pulse racing. Julia pivoted toward the sound, but shadows congealed, forming a barricade that pushed against her. As she fought through the thick tendrils, her body trembled, each pulse of darkness a reminder of the suffocating dread that enveloped her. "Lily! Ethan!" She shrieked again, desperation clawing at her throat. She needed them to hear her, to remember who they were. "Do you hear me? You're not lost." For a moment, a gap in the shadows seemed to pulse invitingly, as if daring her to advance. She bolted forward, casting every ounce of her determination into the light of the toy. The darkness hissed, retreating as if struck, revealing fleeting glimpses of her children behind the veil, frail, terrified figures caught between realms, but there was Mr. Talbot, a lurking heartbeat of terror, blocking their path. He stepped closer, his presence looming larger than the merging shadows. "You're wasting your breath, Julia. They belong to the darkness now. Just like you soon will. Julia's heart thundered. The more she screamed, the more he seemed to relish her torment. But then she remembered. Love was boundless. It wasn't just hers. It thrummed through her children too. Fight. Fight the shadows. Remember our home. The darkness shuddered, and for a fraction of a moment, Julia thought she saw flickers of recognition in her children's eyes. Mommy helped their voices merged with her call, entwining in a desperate melody of hope. Suddenly, Talbot lunged, a swift movement in the suffocating air. Julia dove, arms outstretched toward her children. The space twisted around her, light and shadow pulsating in a dizzying rhythm. She felt weightless for an instant, as if suspended between two worlds, and then, she heard it. A chant, low and unsettling, rising from the depths of darkness. The shadows shifted in response, contorting like distorted limbs reaching for her, offering promises of release. Join us, Julia, join you. Never. She bellowed, each word a lifeline of defiance. The spectre's grip loosened momentarily, uncertainty rippling through the darkness. Mommy. The cry cut through the chaos, igniting a spark inside Julia. Instinctively, she grasped the toy, its glow brightening in response to her fury. Stay with me. Hold on. Julia shouted, her focus narrowing on the flickering light, the embodiment of her love, anchoring her to reality. Yet just as this new strength surged through her, it was met by a wave of darkness, overwhelming and cruel, drowning her children's voices in a whirlpool of despair. Their faces blurred, transforming into horrid masks of sorrow and fear, fading beneath tendrils creeping closer. Time slipped away as the shadows surged forward, clawing hungrily at her soul. With frantic breaths, Julia realized she had to choose. But the question begged louder now. What was she willing to sacrifice herself, her very sanity? Let it be me. She pleaded to the void, to the dark specter watching with cold indifference. Take me instead. Just let them go. The shadows faltered, whispering secrets in dusky tones, and Julia could feel the shift in the air. But deep in the abyss, laughter bubbled back up, low and guttural. Such a noble sacrifice, but their fates are intertwined with yours now. As the hold of darkness tightened again, Julia's breath hitched. Was her sacrifice enough to break through? The darkness surged against her, and she stumbled, barely keeping hold of the flickering toy. A new scream sliced through, sharp and piercing. What did it mean for her children now? And what dark price would she pay to save them all? The scream resonated through the shadows, a haunting echo that skittered past her ears, chilling her to the bone. Julia's heart raced as she spun around, her breath hitching. The air felt dense, pressing against her chest, nearly suffocating. Had it come from Ethan? Or was it Lily? Hope twisted into a sharp knot of fear in her gut. Ethan. Lily. She called out, voice trembling. The shadows swirled, thick and relentless, drowning her calls in their malevolent grasp. Each whisper from the darkness felt like claws scraping against her skin, each snicker a reminder of how close she was to losing everything. She focused on her flickering toy, its light pulsing weaker now, dimmed by the insidious gloom closing in. You're not lost. You can fight. She implored, desperation wrapping around her words as she raised the toy high. The light flared briefly, illuminating the grotesque figures lurking just beyond its reach. Julia could sense their scorn. They thrived on her fear, feeding off it. The toy wavered in her hands. No, don't give up. She hissed through gritted teeth. But doubt snaked into her mind. Was she strong enough to protect them? To save even herself? Suddenly, she heard them again, voices mingled with a chilling chant, twisting into a mockery of her pleas. Mother, join us in the dark, forever. Leave us alone. She screamed, a surge of rage propelling her forward. As she pushed past the creeping shadows, images of her children flickering in and out of focus, she felt their despair tugging at her soul. It twisted, coiling tighter around her as she lunged forward, tearing through the shadowy barrier attempting to imprison her. Mommy! The cry rang clear, piercing through the fog as it wrapped around her. It was Ethan, she was sure of it. With newfound purpose, Julia pressed on, her heart screaming louder than the darkness. Each step was a battle, shadows writhing beneath her feet, trying to pull her back into the depths. She stumbled but propelled herself forward, fueled by the distant sound of her son's voice. "Stay away from them!" she shouted, grappling with the weight pressing against her. The malevolent laughter from Talbot reverberated through the air, a dark, sickening sound that coiled around her mind. "They belong to me, Julia. You'll see." A flurry of memories washed over Julia, snippets of laughter, everyday moments. Family dinners, long walks in the park, bedtime stories, all the love they shared. "No!" she cried, and the light of the toy surged in response, illuminating the darkness and briefly revealing the desperately frightened faces of her children, trapped behind a wall of black. As the light flickered, she saw Talbot's form shift and contort behind the shadows. He moved with a serpentine grace, eyes gleaming with a predatory hunger. "You will fail," he hissed. "This darkness is your home now." Julia's heart sank as she felt the cold tendrils wrapping around her ankles, pulling her down. "Fight!" she shouted again, her voice echoing through the darkened void. "We can do this together." In that moment, a flicker of hope ignited in her chest. The toy's glow pulsed as if responding to her courage. Her mind raced with a desperate plan, a desperate gamble. If she could engage the shadows, distract them. No more time, she had to act. "This is your last chance," she howled, fingers gripping the glimmering toy tightly. "I won't let you take my children." But just as she readied herself for a final push, the shadows thickened anew, reversing her advances. The laughter grew louder, morphing into a cacophony of horrid voices. "She'll be ours, and so will they." Julia fell to her knees, despair enveloping her like a suffocating shroud. "No! I won't lose them!" she screamed, and in a moment of sheer will, she thrust the toy ahead, releasing a desperate wave of light. The darkness recoiled. But just as triumph gripped her heart, shadows surged forward again, engulfing her. "Your love is not enough," Talbot's taunting whisper echoed as blackness swallowed her whole. "Mommy!" came the faintest voice. "No!" she gasped, fighting against surrender. And then a final flicker of light sparked from the toy, illuminating the room like a burst of lightning. What would emerge from the depths? Would her sacrifice change the fabric of the battle? Or would nothing remain but shadows? The burst of light felt like a last gasp of hope, but it quickly dimmed, drowning Julia in the familiar dread that wrapped around her like a shroud. The grotesque laughter echoed, swirling around her, and the shadows pressed in, hungry for her despair. The flicker of courage she had felt moments ago seemed a cruel taunt as darkness clawed back, reclaiming the space inch by inch. "Ethan! Lily!" she called again, her voice cracking with desperation, but the words felt weak, lost in a world that fed on her fear. Behind her, the shadows shifted, forming sinewy shapes that twisted and writhed as if alive. Julia felt their cold breath on her neck, a sharp reminder of how close they were. She stumbled backward, the world around her growing darker, the walls of her own mind closing in like a vice that if she had any strength left, it was slipping away. "No! You won't take them. You won't take me!" she shouted, flinging the toy forward once more. The light surged briefly, illuminating faces twisted in terror, her children, their eyes wide and pleading. Her heart shattered anew, and she shot forward, instinct over reason guiding her. Julia clawed through the darkness, their cries echoing in her soul. "Stay with me! Fight!" she screamed, a mantra of survival echoing through her own fears, but then the shadows lunged, encircling her with a cruel embrace. Julia gasped as tendrils gripped her wrists, pulling her down, their grip icy and suffocating. "Give in," they whispered, a chorus of voices, tantalizing and sickening. "Come to the dark, it will be easier." The thought slithered through her head, but the visions of Ethan and Lily reigned supreme, their faces sparked in vivid memory. Not an easy road. A hard one, forged in love and pain. No. Julia expelled through gritted teeth, summoning remnants of strength. With all her might, she raised the toy once more, and the space around her shimmered. An electric shock surged through her as she willed the light to burn brighter. It flickered, hesitating as the shadows pressed closer, their forms writhing in spasms of malevolence. Suddenly, the chorus of monstrous laughter swelled, menacingly in sync. "You can't win, Julia. They are ours." Every syllable twisted like a knife, but Julia fought back, harnessing rage to ignite her resolve. She steeled herself, knowing she had to reach them. Distant, dulled echoes of her children's laughter flickered in her mind, it fueled her desire to break through. "I love them," she bellowed. "You have no power over love." The toy flared, glowing with fury, a beacon of her defiance. The shadows recoiled, flickering with uncertainty, and for a brief moment, Julia could see glimpses of her children darting through the haze, fleeting and terrified. They were alive within this nightmare, they had to be. But just as hope gripped her soul, Talbot loomed closer, a monstrous figure of impending doom. "Ah, sweet Julia," he hissed, dark and low, sending a shiver down her spine. "You are running out of time. The light cannot last, and neither will you. You have until midnight, when the veil between worlds wears thin, and then it will be too late." Suddenly, the shadows constricted like a serpent, tightening their hold, pulling her down into their depths where time felt malleable, different. The clock in her mind began to tick ominously, each second stretching painfully. "What will you sacrifice to save them?" Talbot's voice slithered through the dark. "Make your choice now." Julia could feel panic rising. Sacrifice? What did he want? Time had become her enemy, and she could sense the weight of every second slipping away like sand through her fingers. In that moment, as the dark pressed in closer, entwining around her, her mind raced. What was she willing to give? The phantom voices whispered secrets she didn't want to hear. Just as a frenzy erupted within her, the last flicker of the toy dimmed. "Mommy!" Ethan and Lily's cries rang through the darkness, igniting a spark of adrenaline. She couldn't let them fade. But could she truly fight back against Talbot and the darkness? And then what would be the cost? Would she face a final confrontation or risk losing everything? As shadows consumed her, the sound began to swirl. Was it a child's laughter, or something far more sinister that awaited her? What would emerge when the clock struck midnight? The darkness wrapped around Julia tighter, each pulse of it pulling her deeper into despair. The shadows shifted like serpents, writhing at the edges of her vision, their laughter mingling with her children's cries. Panic clawed at her throat as she searched for a way out, her heart pounding like a drum, drowning out all rational thought. "Ethan! Lily!" She screamed again, desperation clawing at her voice. She could feel the cold tendrils gripping at her limbs, their chill leeching what little warmth remained. "Sacrifice," Talbot's voice echoed, serpentine and taunting. "What will it be?" His shadow loomed ever closer, a twisted smile plastered across his grotesque features. The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating, swirling like an impending storm. With one hand free, Julia gripped the toy tighter, feeling its warmth radiate against her palm. "I will not give in." She spat, her voice sharp against the suffocating hush. The light pulsed weakly, sending sparks into the oppressive dark, momentarily warding off the insidious fingers of the void. Tiny glimpses of her children flickered in and out, a flash of Ethan's bright smile, the joyful glimmer in Lily's eyes. Each sight stoked the fire within her. "I love you," she shouted, and her own voice echoed against a backdrop of relentless laughter. A flicker of defiance surged through her. She could not let that laughter claim their innocence, but shadows began to swirl again, forming into dense coils that latched onto her throat. Julia's breath became shallow, panic rising like bile. Find a way, she murmured to herself, her resolve desperately contending with despair. Suddenly, the shadows thinned enough for her to catch a fleeting image of the clock, its hands teetering dangerously close to midnight. Julia's heart raced, knowing the true danger lay in that moment. Talbot's eyes glimmered as if he could sense her resolve wavering, a shark preying on vulnerability. Choose wisely, Julia. You have only moments, he taunted. The laughter crescendoed around her, echoing off the unseen walls, a cacophony of dread that threatened to splinter her mind. Just tell me what you want. She cried into the darkness, desperation spilling out in a torrent. I swear I'll do anything. Anything? Talbot asked, tilting his head to capture the moment like a spider luring in a fly. You could trade your last breath, or perhaps your memories of love and joy. His words hung heavy in the air. Julia could feel her heart racing. Could she trade her memories to save her children? A life without the warmth of love would be a hollow existence. But losing Ethan and Lily? No. She would rather give everything than surrender them. A flicker of recognition bloomed within her. The game Talbot was playing, she needed to turn it against him. I'm not afraid, she whispered fiercely. You're not stronger than love. The shadows recoiled, momentarily stunned. Julia felt the warmth of the toy surge as she strong-armed her will against the dark. I choose to fight. But that only brought fresh laughter, echoing around her like a haunting melody. Talbot's voice cut through, sinister and smooth. Oh, dear Julia, you misunderstand. Love is powerful, yes, but fear is an ally of darkness. And as if responding to his command, the shadows surged forward once more, enveloping Julia, compressing her fears and doubts into a swirling vortex. She gasped, the breath stolen from her lungs, a terror that clawed at her mind, whispering taunts and doubt. No. She screamed, straining against the suffocating darkness, her spirit flickering like a candle in the wind. You will not take me. Yet the clock ticked on, each second a reminder of her impending doom. She could feel it, a weight settling in her chest, squeezing all hope until it nearly vanished. As darkness threatened to drown her, she caught another glimpse of Ethan and Lily, their faces searching and afraid, and the final threads of resolve knitted tightly around her core. I will find you. She vowed, and in that moment, an unearthly scream erupted around her as the shadows momentarily faltered, but when she opened her eyes, Talbot stood before her, closer than ever, eyes gleaming with malicious delight. Midnight is near and the shadows are hungry, his voice dripped with promise and threat. Julia's breath quivered in her chest, cold as death, as she realized the truth. She was about to face the choice she had feared the most. What was the price of love, and would she be brave enough to pay it? The shadows pressed tighter around Julia, squeezing the breath from her lungs like icy fingers wrapping around her throat. Talbot leaned closer, his foul breath washing over her. The room seemed to pull away as panic clawed at her mind, her thoughts fracturing, scattering like leaves in a storm. Time is running out, Talbot hissed, his teeth gleaming in the half-light. The darkness thickened, swirling as if it had a life of its own. It wrapped around her limbs, holding her in place, a living chain of dread. Don't you want to save them? He whispered, his voice slick and oily. Your children could be free, Julia. All it takes is a small sacrifice. The clock's hands ticked unmistakably loud, a metronome marking the rhythm of her anxiety. Every tick was a reminder that she teetered on the edge of a fathomless abyss. Julia could almost feel it, the void hungry for her, for them. No. She screamed through gritted teeth, summoning a strength she didn't know she possessed. I won't trade anything. I refuse. The laughter echoed again, mocking and cruel, as if the shadows were celebrating her defiance. You think you can fight fear? Fear is everywhere, Julia. It's in the light and the dark. It's in your heart, your mind, and your soul. With every word, the despair seeped deeper. Julia's fingers tightened around the toy, its warmth a fragile anchor in the swirling gloom. You're wrong. She cried, heart racing. Love is stronger than fear. I'll find a way. The shadows recoiled slightly at her passionate outburst, and she seized the moment, pushing back against the dark, visualizing Ethan and Lily. But as she fought, she could hear them soft, distant cries that twisted the knife deeper into her heart. They sounded frightened, "Lost Mommy." Came Lily's voice, ghostly and small, cutting through the thunderous chaos. "Mommy, help us." Julia's stomach dropped. "Hold on. Hold on." She yelled, feeling shards of hope and terror collide within her. "I'll save you." "Ah," the pull of the maternal instinct, Talbot purred, his eyes shining with wicked amusement. "But how much are you willing to sacrifice? Your children or perhaps yourself?" "No." The word tore from her throat, raw and strangled. She could almost taste the fear on her tongue, thick and metallic. "I refuse to lose anyone." The shadows shifted, dark faces swirling in a chaotic dance, twisting her resolve. "What will you give if you still wish to fight? What is worth more than your misery?" In that moment, an idea crept into her mind, jagged and frantic. "I will give you the truth," she breathed, her voice trembling. "I will show you my love, all of it." Talbot's smirk faltered only for the briefest second, his wicked demeanor slightly dampened. "The truth. So interesting. But truths can be butchered. What if I took your love and contorted it?" Julia's heart beat frantically, but she held fast. "You can't twist what's real." A spark of courage lit within her. She would show him exactly how love could shine against his darkness. For every shadow that swirled, she pictured Ethan and Lily laughing, their joy a fierce torch against the night. The shadows shivered. For a moment, it felt as though the darkness might recede, but then, a piercing scream shattered the air. Julia's heart plummeted as she recognized Lily's voice, trembling and terrified. "Mommy! Lily!" The scream ripped through Julia, filling her with a desperate urgency. She thrashed against the dark, vision blurring with tears. The echo of the clock ticked closer to midnight, a countdown she could almost hear echo within her own heartbeat. "No! I will not lose you." As she pushed against the torment, Talbot's laughter returned, a low rumble vibrating through the shadows. "Midnight will usher in a reckoning. Are you ready to lose everything, Julia?" The darkness surged again, rising with an otherworldly howl, eager to reclaim her spirit. Julia's defiance surged anew. She reached deeper within, finding that spark of warmth. "I will find you. I will fight for you." But in that moment, the shadows pulled back, revealing a doorway faint and flickering. The truth lay just beyond, shrouded in a terrifying uncertainty. What lay behind that door? Was it a true escape, or merely another trap? Her heart raced as the specter of Talbot lingered, a dark shadow lurking in the edges of hope. "Choose quickly. I grow bored of your games." With fear clawing at her throat, Julia stepped toward the doorway, heart pounding louder than ever, knowing her choice could change everything. Was she ready to face whatever hell lay beyond? As Julia stepped toward the flickering doorway, a mixture of fear and resolve pulsed through her veins. Talbot's laughter echoed harshly, contrasting sharply with the desperate cries of her children. "You might find they are waiting, or perhaps a darker fate awaits," he taunted, shadowy fingers curling around the edges of her resolve. "Keep your darkness." She shouted defiantly, her heart thundering against the walls of her chest. Her children needed her, and no lie or twisted lure would deter her. Each step toward the doorway felt like a battle against invisible forces, the shadows slithering like serpents, ready to pull her back into despair. "For every ounce of pain you throw at me, I will fight back with love." As she crossed the threshold, the air thickened, brimming with memories and emotions that collided violently against one another. She could feel echoes of laughter mingling with cries of despair. "Ethan! Lily!" she cried, the urgency in her voice curling around the darkness. The room brightened momentarily, illuminating glimmers of hope amidst the encroaching black. Suddenly, the shadows surged, pushing against her like a tidal wave, threatening to swallow her whole. But Julia pressed forward with her heart exposed, pouring every shred of love into the air. I will not lose my children. The warmth from the toy pulsed intensely, each beat in sync with her fierce determination and parental love. In the midst of the turbulence, she caught sight of her children just beyond the swirling veil of shadows. Their faces pale and terrified reflected the horror of the nightmare they were ensnared in. It twisted her gut in anguish. Stay with me, she cried. I'm coming for you. With every ounce of her strength, Julia grasped the memories that grounded her, the sound of their laughter, the way their faces lit up with joy. She summoned everything she could recall of their time together, wrapping it around her like a shield against the dark. Remember. Remember our love. In that moment, the shadows halted, hesitating as if recoiling from the pureness of her words. The flickering of the toy brightened, beaming with fierce energy. Julia surged forward, fueled by the desperate cries of her children. Focus on me, she urged. Fight the darkness. You are not lost. Their eyes widened, and just for an instant, clarity broke through the fog of despair. Mommy. They reached out toward her, tears glistening like shards of glass, shards of hope, but then Talbot stepped in, his form towering ominously as he unleashed a vicious laugh. You dare think love can conquer despair? They belong to me now. No. Julia shouted, unwavering. They belong to love. They belong to me. And suddenly, everything shifted. The shadows began to pulse, flickering as if caught in a storm of energy. She saw her children wavering between light and dark, their forms melding with the tension around them. Fight it. Fight him. Julia pleaded, her heart racing. A moment of clarity washed over her, solidifying her resolve. She knew what she had to do. I choose all of you, every memory, every laugh, every tear. You can't take that away. She hurled the toy into the swirling darkness, where it burst into a brilliant light, illuminating the shadows that cowered in its presence. The room erupted in energy, the walls vibrating with the force of her love. Remember who you are. The shadows shrieked, their forms twisting and buckling as the light fought against their grip. Julia felt the darkness releasing her children, the shift palpable as Lily and Ethan broke free from their haze, swimming toward the light with terror-stricken resolve. Mommy! They cried. She reached for them, heart soaring as she felt the warmth of their tiny hands grasping hers. Time felt suspended, the shadows finally yielding, replaced by a cacophony of laughter as the darkness began to crumble. With one final push of energy, Julia embraced the blinding light as the shadows shattered into a million pieces, dissolving into wisps of despair that vanished into the ether. The room brightened fully, and with it came the realization that they were free. Julia collapsed into the arms of her children as tears cascaded down her cheeks. No more darkness, she murmured, clutching them tightly. We're together. We made it. Lily and Ethan wrapped their little arms around her, the warmth of their presence overwhelming. As the last remnants of dread lifted from their surroundings, a sense of peace washed over them, blanketing Hadley Falls in a newfound light. And in that moment, while the whispers faded into silence, Julia felt a profound sense of relief. They had triumphed over despair, and though scars remained, they were no longer shackled by the shadows of the past. Hand in hand, they turned to walk out of the house, leaving the nightmares behind as a bond forged by love carried them forward. Julia knew the darkness would never touch them again. They had each other, and that was enough. Together, they stepped into the dawn, ready to embrace life brimming with hope. If you felt the power of this story, you need to subscribe now to catch every chilling tale as it unfolds. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and support our journey together. Flood the comments section with your thoughts, theories, and reactions about this heart-stopping conclusion, and don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to experience this breathtaking moment. Your support is everything.